I despise you.
The radius of 250 centimeters is the distance I can swing around. I'm always trying my best to rise above it. Give me one more day, just wait and see.
So many people are broken, and they're not getting.
Twice you got me excited. I trusted you. I took you back, Upper Deck. You broke my heart. Then you showed me your miniatures. And I was happy.
After the success of their card game, Upper Deck announced they'd be making a miniatures game centered around the online universe. Combat would be reminiscent of the online PvP-style battlegrounds that would be easy to understand for people who currently play the online game, and it would feature a unique U-base.
All your base are belong to us.
They already burned me from the card game, so how'd they get me to play the miniatures game? Simple. Bribery!
I don't know the criteria, but my store got a free starter of the miniatures game a few weeks before the game's release in order to play and promote it.
So yeah, bribery. 'Cause why not?
Now, the first thing I noticed was the size of these miniatures. I was used to the average size of most minis games, usually about a 1-inch base and a 1.5-inch tall figure. The WoW figures, the average WoW figures, have a 1¼ inch base and are over 2 inches tall. A larger figure in another game is their equivalent to a normal sized figure. Suffice to say, that made an immediate impression.
It's no big surprise. One of the positives of the card game was the consistently good artwork. Having large, visually impressive miniatures should be par for the course. So, what about those U-bases?
The U-bases were made to snap your figures into. On the bottom was a dial to display what turn the figure could move on. On top was a circle of numbers. All figures have a hole on the bottom. You align the hole on the figure with their health total shown off the U-base. No need for dice or counters to keep track of damage. Everything that needed to be changed with your individual figures during a game was done through the U-base.
I really like the idea behind the U-bases, and in theory, they'd work beautifully. In theory.
After a while, people started making their own card systems or just plain used tokens and ignored the base altogether. Why? Execution.
The U-bases were notorious for not snapping the figure in properly. They would consistently pop out, not set in at all, and just felt awkward.
It really shouldn't have been an issue. Everything should have just been uniform and fit the same. The real problem arose when they tried to overdo it. If the figure just sort of came to rest or slipped into the base, that's one thing. Upper Deck, however, thought it better for the figures to snap into place. Great idea, poor execution.
I do want to state I'm not picking on Upper Deck because they're a bad gaming company. That'll be a different series of videos.
I've spent far too much time on these U-bases. Let's jump to another section, your character's abilities and stats. Each character has a pretty basic stat card. Health, armor, and resist, as well as all their attacks. Your attacks and spells have a cost, range, and damage. Cost is paid in turns, which we'll touch on later. Range is just that, range. You can attack that many spaces away. Damage tells you how many dice you roll. For each success, a hit. If you roll a 0, or in this case, a skull...
Skull! No! Skull! Santa Maria! Skull! No!
Then you can activate that attack or spell's crit effect. This may be simply extra damage or may give you additional attack opportunities. To diversify your character, you can also choose 2 class-appropriate abilities or items to give to each of your figures.
Now we'll jump into the mechanics, which, surprisingly, I don't have much problem with.
Unlike the story behind the card game, the story behind the miniatures game feels real. It is meant to act and feel like a WoW battleground. Your characters spawn in the graveyard and make their way to their opponent or to a goal and gather points until one side is declared the victor. There are the miniatures mainstays of line of sight, as well as the use of high ground and cover to increase your chances during battle.
My chance to hit you has increased.
If you kill an opponent's character, you advance their turn counter by 5 and place them outside the game. When the turn shown on their U-base comes around, they respawn and come back into play.
That's right! On the 3rd day I rise again, in fulfillment of the awesomeness!
Alright, turns. Turns are how you pay for things in this game. Every spell and attack has a certain number of turns. Whenever you use one, you advance the turn counter on the U-base that many times. That character cannot make another action until that turn comes around.
When you pass turn 10, it resets back around to 1 and begins the cycle anew. For example, if it's turn 7 and I use a spell that costs 4 turns, I would turn the dial 4 times until I hit turn 1. It was a surprisingly good mechanic.
So we have a good mechanic with a powerful franchise and only one large annoyance. But that can't be the only reason it failed, right? Of course not.
See, there's one rule above all else that a game should never, ever go against. One thing that can spell certain doom for any game, whether it be card, miniatures, board, or otherwise.
This game is declared broken.
I suppose I should explain myself. A game can have a solid story, mechanic, fan base, art. It can have all the makings of a great game. Hell, it can be a great game. Then something happens. Usually at Upper Deck.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
A game becomes broken. It can be a combo or rule change, but 9 times out of 10, it's one single card. Or in this case, a mini.
This isn't some rare happenstance either. It occurs quite often. Why do you think long, popular running games have restrictions and ban lists?
In this case, they broke the game in 2 ways. First and foremost was the introduction of Carne Bloodhoof. Bloodhoof was an epic rare figure introduced in the second set of the game. So what's the problem? Well, this is a 2-parter. If we look at his ability, he knocks figures back for each damage he deals to it, and Carne gets to choose where it goes. So already you can start chucking people behind mountains or into your allies.
That's potent and already pretty close to busted. But it's not quite there. We need something extra.
Oh, what's this? What? In case you're not putting this all together, let me explain. Carne has 11 health, so he's not dying anytime soon. He has a 3-turn cost attack for 7 possible damage. For each damage he does, you move that figure back that many spaces. And if you roll a crit, which is a 70% possibility of success, you can auto-kill any figure on the board. That's not counting abilities or equipment that increase your chances to roll a crit to a near guarantee.
Yeah, you can make a lot of criticisms about this figure and how it can be killed like any other figure. Good luck.
A broken card or miniature isn't something unbeatable, but something unfair or unbalanced that forces other players to either play it or run a deck or team specifically against it. Best example I can give is the Chaos Emperor Dragon. CED was a top-tier deck when the card was released. It's easy to see why. You can easily play the card within the first turn, and it'll extinguish the entire field and both players' hands while inflicting massive damage to your opponent.
Which is why CED is and has been banned ever since the first ban list came out for Yu-Gi-Oh!
So how else is the game broken? And why else could it fail? I mean, the game was struggling after the second set came out, so could Upper Deck save the game, or just end up putting it out of its misery?
Take a guess.
The answer to all these questions is surprisingly simple. The Spectral Safari.
Upper Deck was trying to save their dying game by taking a page from the card game and bringing in the loot cards. I hate you.
Mind you, they weren't anything foreign to the miniatures either. They also had a chance for loot cards.
Of course. Why would you worry about making a great game when you can just bribe your players?
The entire premise of the Spectral Safari was this. Everyone would pay $20 to enter. They would receive a booster pack of miniatures to make your 2v2 team, and you could use any and all the miniatures you pull from that booster pack. The winner of the tournament would receive a Spectral Tiger loot card. And the second place would get a Red Baron loot card, which was another loot card worth well over $100.
When we ran it, we got a major turnout. We're working with over $1,000 in prizes. So why'd it fail? Sealed sucks.
A sealed event is when you only use what you pulled from boosters. You learn that this was not fair as the top 4 ended up being whomever pulled epic level figures. Reading through other message boards talking about the event, it seems to be true no matter what event you went to.
So instead of it being about the player's skill and luck, it became almost entirely about the luck.
After that, most players didn't really want to play. Who would when you lost out on a chance for tons of cash because of pure luck?
So they had a decent game with strong mechanics and a powerful following, and they still screwed it up. The U-bases are pieces of crap, the card game was still pissing off other people, and the game was broken by the second set.